The story begins with an air of unease as the protagonist, often an urban explorer, a journalist chasing a lead, or someone searching for a missing person, arrives at the outskirts of a forgotten town. The locals speak in hushed tones about the old house on the hill, its windows boarded up, its porch sagging under years of neglect. They warn of strange happenings, whispers in the night, figures glimpsed in the upper floors, and rumors of those who entered but never returned. Some say the house is cursed. Others claim it was once the workshop of a reclusive artist obsessed with perfection. The protagonist, driven by curiosity or desperation, dismisses the superstitions and sets out toward the looming structure, the weight of the unknown pressing against them with each step. As they approach, the house seems to watch them back. The empty eye sockets of broken mannequins litter the overgrown yard, half buried in the dirt like forgotten corpses. The front door creaks open slightly, as if inviting them inside. A chill runs down their spine, but they push forward, crossing the threshold into a space frozen in time. Dust swirls in the dim light, filtering through cracked boards, and the air smells of mildew and something faintly sweet, like old perfume. The first room is filled with mannequins, some posed elegantly as if in mid-conversation, others slumped in grotesque positions. Their blank, glassy eyes seem to follow movement, and the protagonist can't shake the feeling that they weren't all arranged this way moments ago. A faint sound, a whisper, a sigh, echoes from deeper inside the house. The protagonist hesitates, suddenly aware of how alone they are, and yet how not alone the house feels. This opening scene sets the tone for the entire story. A slow burn dread, the promise of hidden horrors, and the unsettling sense that the protagonist has stepped into something far beyond their understanding. The mannequins are not just objects, they are silent witnesses, and perhaps something more. The mystery has begun, and there's no turning back. The evening sky hangs low and bruised with twilight as the protagonist's car rolls to a stop on the gravel shoulder of a long-abandoned road. The engine's death rattle fades into the silence of the surrounding woods, leaving only the sound of wind hissing through dead leaves. Ahead, a wrought iron gate, twisted with rust and half swallowed by ivy, marks the entrance to the property. A sign dangles from one hinge, its faded letters barely legible. Private. No trespassing. Beyond it, a crumbling driveway snakes uphill, disappearing into a thicket of skeletal trees. At the crest of the hill, the house looms, a grotesque silhouette against the purpling sky, its windows shattered or boarded, its gables sagging like the bones of some long-dead beast. The protagonist steps out of the car, the gravel crunching underfoot like the grinding of teeth. There's no birdsong here, no chirp of crickets, just a heavy, watchful quiet. The air smells of damp earth and something sharper, like chemicals left to rot. A local gas station attendant's words echo in their mind. That place ain't right. Used to be a doll maker's workshop back before, well, you didn't hear it from me, but folks say he didn't just make mannequins, he made 'em lifelike. The man had refused to say more, his knuckles whitening around the counter's edge. The moment the protagonist steps across the threshold, the air changes. The outside world, the wind, the distant hum of life, snaps shut behind them like the ceiling of a tomb. The door creaks closed on its own, not with a slam, but with a slow, deliberate sigh, as if the house itself is exhaling after holding its breath for years. A thin layer of dust swirls in the stale air, catching the dim light that bleeds through broken slats in the boarded-up windows. The silence is thick, suffocating, until the first floorboard groans underfoot, a sound so loud it might as well have been a scream. The foyer is a gallery of the uncanny. Mannequins stand frozen in mid-motion, their smooth, featureless faces turned just slightly toward the entrance, as if they had been waiting. Some are posed in domestic scenes. One sits at a dusty table, its plastic fingers curled around a teacup filled with decades-old grime. Another leans against a wall, its posture too casual, too human. But others are all wrong. A figure crouches in the corner, its limbs bent at unnatural angles, its head twisted backward. Another lies sprawled on the staircase, one arm outstretched, fingers splayed as if it had been trying to crawl away from something before it was frozen in place. The protagonist's pulse hammers in their throat. They're just mannequins, they tell themselves. Just plastic, just props. But the longer they look, the more the details unsettle. The way the dust has settled unevenly on their bodies, as if some have moved recently. The faint, greasy sheen on their skin that doesn't look like paint. It looks like sweat. And the eyes. God. The eyes. Empty sockets, most of them, but a few have glass irises that glint in the half-light, pupils fixed in a stare that follows the protagonist as they move deeper into the house. Then, a noise. A soft click, like a joint settling. The protagonist whirls around, breath held. Nothing has moved. And yet, wasn't that one's arm by its side before? Now it's slightly raised, the fingers curled inward, as if beckoning. A trick of the light. A trick of the mind. The house is getting to them already. They force themselves forward, past a hallway lined with more figures. These are different, older, their paint chipped, their limbs cracked. Some are missing hands, heads, torsos split open to reveal hollow insides. One has a face that's been melted, the features sagging like wax, the mouth stretched into a silent howl. The protagonist's flashlight flickers over them, casting long, twitching shadows that writhe on the walls. For a moment, the shadows don't match the mannequin's poses. A door stands ajar at the end of the hall. From within, a faint sound. A whisper? A rustle of fabric? The protagonist steps closer, pushes the door open. The room is filled with mannequins, not posed, not arranged, packed together, limbs tangled, faces pressed against each other in a grotesque mockery of an embrace. Some are children-sized, their blank eyes too wide, their smiles too sharp. At the center of the room, one stands apart. A woman, her features eerily lifelike, her lips parted as if caught mid-sentence. Her hand is outstretched, palm up. On it rests a single human tooth. The protagonist stumbles back. The door slams shut behind them. From inside the room, something knocks. The deeper the protagonist ventures into the house, the more the air thickens with the scent of old varnish and something far worse. A sickly sweet undertone of decay masked beneath layers of dust and mothballs. The walls seem to press closer, their peeling wallpaper revealing glimpses of what lies beneath. Strange symbols scratched into the plaster, dark stains that branch like veins across the surface. The flashlight beam wavers as they enter what must have been the artist's workshop. The room is frozen in time, workbenches cluttered with half-finished faces, their hollow eyes staring blankly from the shadows. Hands in various stages of completion lie scattered like discarded gloves, fingers curled as if they had been reaching for something when the life went out of them. A large, stained mirror dominates one wall, its surface fogged with age. The protagonist's reflection wavers in the glass, distorted and unfamiliar. For a moment their features seem to blur, the edges softening, the expression flattening, until they nearly resemble the mannequins surrounding them. A sharp breath, and the illusion breaks, but the unease lingers. On the central work table, a notebook lies open, its pages brittle with time. The handwriting is frantic, the ink blotted in places as if the writer's hand had been shaking. They fight the process at first, they always do, but the clay must be shaped, the imperfections smoothed away. Only then can they achieve true beauty, immortal and unchanging. Beneath the words, a series of sketches depict a human figure gradually transforming into a mannequin, its terrified expression giving way to an empty, serene smile. The final drawing shows the completed figure standing among others in a familiar pose, one the protagonist recognizes from the foyer. A sudden draft stirs the pages, flipping them to reveal a newer entry, one that couldn't possibly be decades old. "You've come at last. I've been waiting. Don't you want to be perfect?" The words seem to pulse on the page. The protagonist staggers back, knocking over a jar of liquid that shatters on the floor. The viscous fluid spreads slowly, carrying with it small, round objects that roll into the light. Eyes, real human eyes, their irises still vivid with color. One comes to rest against the protagonist's shoe, staring up at them with dreadful familiarity. From somewhere deep in the house, a voice, soft, cultured, and utterly mad, whispers, "Let me show you how beautiful you could be." The workshop door slams shut, the lights go out, and in the darkness, something reaches for them. The darkness swallows everything, the scent of chemicals, the shapes of half-formed faces on the workbench, even the sound of the protagonist's own panicked breathing. For one terrible, endless moment, there is only the void and the cold, creeping certainty that they are no longer alone. Then, a hand, not their own. It brushes against their wrist in the blackness, its fingers smooth and unyielding. Porcelain. The touch lingers for a heartbeat too long before withdrawing, leaving behind a phantom imprint of cold. The lights flicker back on with a buzz of dying electricity. The workshop is unchanged, yet everything has changed. Because now the protagonist sees, really sees. The mannequins surrounding them are no longer just mannequins. Up close, under the sickly yellow light, the truth is undeniable. The pores in the porcelain are too precise, the faint blush on the cheeks too natural. The eyelashes are real, each one individually rooted. One figure's parted lips reveal teeth slightly crooked, too human to be sculpted. And the eyes, God, the eyes, they're moist, glistening, alive. The protagonist stumbles backward, their shoulder knocking into a shelf. Something clatters to the floor, a small audio recorder, its play button jolted on impact. A man's voice, smooth and cultured, spills from the speaker. Subject 12 is resisting the preservation process. A pity. Their features would have made for such an elegant addition. Still, the skin takes the dye beautifully once the screaming stops. The recording cuts off with a click, silence. Then, a sound, software wet. The protagonist turns slowly toward the workbench. The nearest mannequin, a young woman with chestnut hair arranged in perfect curls, is crying. Tears slip down her immobile cheeks, tracking through a thin layer of dust. The protagonist reaches out, their fingers trembling, and the mannequin's hand snaps up to grip their wrist. The eyes blink, the mouth opens, and in a voice like cracking porcelain, it whispers, "Help us." The moment the mannequin's fingers tighten around their wrist, the protagonist wrenches backward, stumbling into a shelf of glass eyes that scatter across the floor like marbles. The crying woman's grip is iron, cold and unrelenting, But as the protagonist pulls away, her porcelain fingers crack apart, brittle from decades of stillness. A choked gasp escapes her lips, not from pain, but from desperation. "Run," she whispers, her voice breaking like shattered china. And then, the house wakes up. A shudder rolls through the walls, deep and groaning, as if the very foundations are stretching after a long sleep. The air hums with something electric, something alive. From the hallway, a slow, syncopated rhythm begins. Click, click, click. The sound of dozens of rigid joints unlocking, of stiff limbs taking their first steps in years. The protagonist doesn't wait. They bolt for the door, their pulse roaring in their ears. The hallway is no longer empty. Mannequins stand motionless in the dim light, their silhouettes lining the corridor like a grotesque honor guard. But as the protagonist sprints past, the figures twist toward them, heads rotating too far, too smoothly, tracking their flight. One lurches forward, its arms swinging out to block the path. The protagonist ducks, feeling the rush of air as plastic fingers graze their hair. Behind them, the workshop door bursts open. Something is coming, something fast. The protagonist rounds a corner and skids to a halt. The foyer is gone. In its place, the hallway stretches onward, longer than it should be, doors warping and multiplying along its length. The walls pulse faintly, as if breathing. The front door, the only exit, is visible at the far end, but the distance seems to grow with every second, and the mannequins are closer. Their movements are jerky at first, uncoordinated, but with every step, they grow more fluid, more human. One crawls along the ceiling, its limbs bending backward, its face pressed against the plaster as it inhales deeply. "You smell like fear," it murmurs. Another rises from the floorboards, its body unfolding like origami, its mouth stretched into a grin too wide for its face. The protagonist runs. Doors slam around them, cutting off escape routes. The walls creak and groan, the house itself rearranging, herding them deeper into its belly. A hand bursts through the plaster, snatching at their jacket. They tear free, fabric ripping, and crash into a room they've never seen before. A gallery. Dozens of figures stand on pedestals, each more lifelike than the last. Some are mid-scream, their mouths frozen in silent agony. Others are serene, beautiful, their faces caught in expressions of bliss. At the center of the room, a single pedestal stands empty. A plaque at its base reads, "Reserved for the final masterpiece." The door behind them clicks shut. A voice, smooth, cultured, and dripping with madness, echoes from the walls. "Let's begin." The door vanishes behind them, swallowed by the shifting walls. The protagonist stumbles into the gallery, their breath ragged, their body trembling with exhaustion. The air is thick with the scent of wet clay and drying varnish. The mannequins stand motionless on their pedestals, waiting, watching. The empty pedestal gleams under the flickering light, its surface smooth and expectant. "You were always meant to be here," the artist's voice whispers. Not from any one direction, but from the walls themselves, from the dust in the air, from the hollow mouths of the surrounding figures. The final piece. The perfect piece. The protagonist backs away, their heel catching on something. A discarded paintbrush, its bristles stiff with old blood. They lurch to the side, knocking into a nearby mannequin. Its arm snaps off at the elbow, hitting the floor with a sound like breaking bone. Inside the hollow limb, something glistens. Flesh, pink and raw, threaded through with delicate wires, pulsing faintly as if still alive. The protagonist gags, recoiling, but the walls are closing in now, the ceiling lowering inch by inch. The mannequins step down from their pedestals in perfect unison, their movements fluid, their glass eyes reflecting a hunger no sculpture should possess. One reaches out, its fingers brushing the protagonist's cheek. The touch burns like ice. "Don't fight it," the crying woman from the workshop murmurs, her voice now joined by dozens of others, whispering, pleading, lying. "It doesn't hurt. Not after a while." The protagonist's legs give out. They collapse to their knees, their muscles locking, their joints stiffening. A strange warmth floods their veins, thick and syrupy. Their fingers twitch, then still. Their skin prickles, then smooths. The artist's laughter curls around them like smoke. Exquisite. The last thing the protagonist sees before their vision clouds over is their own hand, pale, perfect porcelain, reaching up to touch their frozen, smiling face. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.